good evening, everyone. Welcome to another live edition of Legends from the Past and Future Show. I am Armand, and this is Ayana Mu Young. Hello, Ayana. How are you?
Hello. I am doing well. Welcome to the show.
Yes. How was your day today, Ayana?
Oh, it was good. I had a good day. It was a productive day. Got some relaxation in as well, and I'm ready for tonight's show.
Awesome. We got a show tonight. We're gonna talk about the rise and the fall of the Fighting Hawks football program at UMES. That's a
You know what I
university.
realized, Armand?
What's that?
When I
What?
logged in and I looked at my attire, I was like, gosh, I'm representing the black and gold today.
Yes, you are.
It wasn't even intentional. But we'll allow them on so we can hear what they have to say. You know what I mean?
Awesome. So you know what? We're gonna bring first to the stage Dr. Brian C. Mitchell. Dr. Brian C. Mitchell, how you doing tonight, sir?
Oh, it gets better every day.
Welcome to the show, sir. Welcome to the show.
Welcome.
It's my pleasure.
Awesome. Next, we're gonna bring in Kim H. Jones.
I'm here.
We can't see you, Kim.
Yeah. Go on with Dr. Mitchell. Let's see.
That was the problem we had when we played.
Yeah.
Couldn't see it.
Okay. All right. So we're gonna move straight to Dr. Mitchell until Miss Jones can get his technical issues together. So, Dr. Mitchell, how you doing, sir?
Well, like I said earlier, it gets better every day. The closer I get
Awesome.
to the end, the better it gets.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where you from, sir?
Well, I'm from a little small town on the eastern shore called Tipton, Maryland.
Okay.
200 or 300 people. I went to high school in Salisbury, Maryland, a school called James M. Bennett High School. From there, I was recruited to go to UMES to play football. I spent 4 years at UMES. I graduated number 2 in my class. I spent 3 years on the football team because the first year I basically put in place my non-freshman eligibility thought. So I didn't play as a freshman even though I had made the team.
Okay.
And
Okay.
did pretty well academically, and I went on to Columbia University Graduate School of Business from UMES. Got an MBA in finance. I worked for Mobile Law for about 4.5 years, and then I went to a management consulting firm called McKinsey and Company, which is one of the leading management consulting firms in the world. And then I did some things on my own as an entrepreneur, consulting. And then I decided to go back to graduate school, went to Clemson University and got a PhD in industrial management. The whole time the reason why I went and got my PhD because I realized that it was going to be a challenge reinstating football from the outside. So I decided to go back and get my PhD. And the only place I considered working was UMES. I knew that they always had a labor shortage, so I was able to go there. And I've been at UMES for the last 26 years as an associate professor. I teach strategy, supply chain, professional development. Try to give my students some insight as to how they can do better than I did with their academics at UMES and go on to graduate school, get careers in corporate America.
Awesome. So you did say that you're a professor at UMES, right?
I am a professor at UMES, even though they may not actually want me there. I'm a professor. I'm a professor in the Department of Business, and that's the department I've been in for the last 26 years.
Okay. So, Kim, you and Professor Mitchell played football together at UMS, correct?
That is correct. We overlapped. We came in at the same year, 1974. He left because he was a little bit smarter than I was. He left in 78 and I left in 79.
Okay. I got it. So now, you played what position while playing in UMES, Dr. Mitchell?
I was a center. Originally, I played tackle in high school.
Okay.
And offensive tackle. And then when I got to UMES, they converted me to a center.
So you were much bigger back then than you are today.
Actually, I was a little bit smaller. Maybe I'm hiding it with this black shirt on, but I weigh about 280 pounds today.
Okay.
And I played up, probably weighed no more than about 250.
Got you. Now, what about you, Cameron? What position did you play while attending UMES?
Well, I played tight end. I started at that position in my sophomore year, and I played that for the duration of the time I was there, tight end.
So now you guys had a great coach while you were there. You know, he didn't hesitate to cuss anybody out. What was his name?
His name was Harold C. Gray.
C. Gray.
He was an interesting guy. Everything was manhood. If you couldn't stand up for yourself, you'd get crushed at UMES fairly easily. Kim and I witnessed many an athlete come to UMES and got crushed and they went back home.
I got you.
Now,
were you doing some of the crushing? I have a feeling.
The crushing I was talking was two things. To give you an example of how challenging it was athletically, we have a wall in the old gym that has a metal rod holding it together. Because back in the old days, you used to be able to hit people with your forearm. So those guys used to practice their forearm on that wall till they broke the seal. And Kim and I witnessed one of our freshman colleagues get sent back to Detroit because he decided that he wanted to talk to some females, and that was a no-go back in those days as a freshman.
Wow.
You couldn't talk to females, so what did you do for fun? What was good
Football
about being
and school? That was it. Football and school.
This is first time I better not see you talking to anybody.
Wow.
And they enforced that rule.
So what made you choose UMES? I know you said you got a scholarship, so that question can go for both of you. Was there anything else that drew you to that particular school?
Well, UMES had an excellent reputation back in the day of sending guys to the NFL. Matter of fact, over 20-some guys went to the NFL from UMES over a 10-year period of time. And so it was an exciting school back in those times, even though it was relatively small. Had a good reputation in all the sports. Sent a lot of guys to the Olympics. We were the first basketball program ever to be ranked, and the only HBCU ever to be ranked in the top 20. We had 5 people in the 1968 Super Bowl. So that status, having the most people in the Super Bowl, until Deion Sanders came along and some of his colleagues at Florida State. So we had a pretty good reputation.
Awesome. So I see Kim is having issues tonight, but we're gonna dig into the rise and the fall of the Fighting Hawks. Okay, tell us a little bit about the rise of the Fighting Hawks.
Well, the rise of UMES can be attributed to one person. There is an era of the university called the Maryland State era, which is from 1947 to 1970. We had one president during that era, and his name was J.T. Williams. Now, J.T. Williams was a football All-American, and the president of the University of Maryland, Curly Byrd, was also an All-American. So when he chose J.T. Williams, he chose him for his background in athletics. But more importantly, during World War II, J.T. Williams was heavily involved with people like the president's wife and some of the initiatives that they had. So he brought ROTC to UMES. He brought a strong athletic program to UMES. And then he tried to highlight our land grant mission with our ag programs. So really, he's the guy that the reputation of UMES was built on. You know, to give you an example of just how astute he was, in 1946, UMES had an undefeated junior college program because in 1947, we became a four-year institution. So we had a coach named Coffey, who was the head coach at the time. Now remember, he was undefeated, 8-0. J.T. Williams came and replaced an undefeated coach with a guy named Skip McCain, who was now in the College Hall of Fame. So he had a totally different vision for what he wanted to do with athletics. Coach McCain happened to have a master's degree. He was a math, teacher, very intelligent person. And he wanted to elevate the status of UMES. And so that was one of the first things that he did. You know, we have coaches that can't win anything and you can't get rid of them. Can you imagine having the audacity to replace an undefeated coach? So that's what he did.
Okay. Go ahead, Yana. Unmute your mic, Yana.
Tell us about the fall of the program.
Well, the fall of the program started in 1970. There were several things that happened. UMES had developed a reputation that was kind of unique in that we were playing an independent schedule from 1947 to 1954. And during that period of time, we were probably one of the only schools, HBCUs in the country, that were playing interracial games against white schools. In football, for example, we were 12-0. The average score was 38-3. So those guys were trying to prove that they were equal or better than the guys that were coming out of World War II. They were on a mission. In the 1970s, as a result of that, I don't know how candid you want me to be, but certain people have a long memory. And part of that long memory is how can we, take away some of the publicity of this small institution? Because the whole idea now is that the only people that's supposed to be successful are large, well-known institutions. A small school like ours is not supposed to do what we were able to do. Sending people to the Olympics, winning national championships. For example, our track coach won 2 national championships in the same year, NAIA as well as a small college. And that's important because at the time, the person who was the track coach at College Park, if we went to a meet and College Park was there, he wouldn't let his players run against us. That same thing happened when we went to the NIT. We got invited to the NIT in 1973. That was the same year a guy named David Thompson was playing for North Carolina State. They beat Maryland in this championship. Maryland got invited to the NIT, but that same athletic director at the time decided that they wouldn't go to the NIT because they didn't want to have the experience of maybe playing us. So what happened in 1970 was they passed a rule that took away some of the flexibility of the presidents to manipulate their budgets. For example, they said you couldn't use state operating funds to fund athletics. At UMES, you would have the art department would complain that, that the president took $5,000 from their budget and gave it to the football team. Well, with this new rule, you couldn't do that. So that flexibility was taken away. The other thing that happened in the 1970s was that we decided to become part of the MEAC. The MEAC is a Division I program. Now the schools that white schools that we played in the 1940s and 50s, if you look at where they are now, all of those schools are Division III. So that's an important thing when you think about what our options were as a small institution. Because as a small institution, you only have limited sources of revenue. So the state took away one source of revenue by saying you couldn't use state operating funds. Then you decide to go and be Division I, which requires a higher level of revenues. And one of the reasons why we're even here today is that the state basically labeled UMES a non-growth institution. So saying you're not going to grow. And the biggest source of your funding is student fees, student athletic fees. For example, if College Park has 50,000 students and they charge their students $1,000, they got a $50 million budget. If UMES has 1,000 students and they charge $1,000, they only got a $100,000 budget. So scale is very important to how you finance your operation. So basically, keeping UMES small was one of the ways that the state limited our capabilities athletically. We estimated, we had I don't know, your audience may not be aware, there is some evidence that came out, Forbes magazine, that said that the HBCU land grant college were owed $12.8 billion. UMES's share of that is $417 million.
So now you're talking about the land grant institution, right?
Land grant, there are 19 HBCU land grant institutions. In the state of Maryland, the primary land grant institution is College Park. They came under the Merrill Act in 1865. 20 years later, the HBCUs got land grant status, and UMES is a land grant college in the state of Maryland. And so one of the things that has happened over the years is that UMES hasn't gotten his proper allocation of funding from the state of Maryland. So Forbes estimates that's $417 million. If you take that $417 million and say, I'm going to take 5% of that for marketing, letting students know about your programs and all the rest of that stuff, and use the other 95% to say, fund students' tuition. If you did that over a 20-year period, that equates to $51 million worth of athletic fees that were foregone because they labeled us a non-growth institution. Now, there's a university up the street from us, Salisbury University, who is a growth institution. If you do the same calculus and say, look at the difference between the enrollment multiplied times student fees, you come up with $46 million. So being a growth institution, so you notice those two numbers are almost the same, 46 and 51. It's not a big difference between those numbers. So what that does is validate the impact, the negative impact that the state had on UMES. And that has a direct impact on our ability to sustain our athletic programs. The other thing, if you look at, in basketball, we're a basketball only school now. And if you look at the fact that UMES has one of the biggest arenas in the MEAC, our stadium holds 5,600 people. President Heitch really fought to get us a relatively good mid-sized stadium. If you look at the average attendance over a 20-year period of Division I programs is around 4,900 people. So that means we could easily accommodate the average attendance on a regular basis. If you take the average attendance that we had and subtract it from the overall average, and you multiply it times $25, which is a ticket and a nasty hot dog, that's $17 million. So the strategy that we've been imposed on us, which is paying these so-called guarantee games, which is a lot of black schools do that to balance their budget. Well, that strategy means that you're not going to have a very good record at the beginning of the year where you generate excitement of the local community, because 1/3 of your games you're playing guarantee games. So if all of a sudden you 1-9 or 0-10, nobody's going to come to your game. So you can imagine the impact it has on a school like ours. Now, Delaware State, it doesn't matter because their arena only holds 1,500 people to begin with. But UMES, that's a big opportunity cost.
So let me ask you a question. Okay, there was a financial problem. Was that because the University of Maryland had something to do with that, or what created that problem?
Well, the problem was created by the fact that we are part of the University of Maryland system. University of Maryland is the big dog in the system. And then you have these other so-called majority institutions who are growth institutions. For example, in 2007, the chancellor stated in his annual report that they were talking about the fact that there was all of this demand for undergraduate people coming into the system. So what did he say? He said, our 3 growth institutions, and then he named them, Salisbury University, Townsend University, and the University of Maryland University College, accommodated the growth. And then he said, UMES grew despite of the fact that it wasn't designated as a growth institution. So we were growing, but in a way that's a backhanded slap saying we weren't supposed to grow. Mm-hmm. So, so the whole thing of making us a non-growth institution is what's limited our ability to compete. You know, when I talk to our students, what I tell them, there are 3 reasons why you get a college education. You develop some additional academic skills, you know, the computing, the communication, and those things. You develop a mindset. Am I going to be in charge? Am I going to be a leader? And then the third thing is networking. Well, we're able to accommodate our students with the academic piece. You know, our students go on. We had a young lady graduate from the University of Chicago a couple of years ago. Came out 29 years old. Her starting salary was $330,000.
So, Dr. Mitchell,
yes,
I have to interrupt you for 1 second. Okay, we're going to take a quick commercial, a 35-second commercial, and then we're going to get right back with your interview.
No problem.
All right. Well, Legends of the Past and Future Show is looking for sponsorships. This could be you and your company. We would love to feature you here on the show. We have different packages available for different levels of engagement. And we are looking for you and your company to come aboard and help us support college students. Not only do we help pay college tuition, we also provide internships for college students to help them afford some of the financial burdens that they face. So we are looking for you and you. If you have a recommendation, please reach out to Armand Wallace for further information.
Okay, Dr. Mitchell. All right. So, Curly Bird. What is the significance behind Curly Bird?
Curly Bird was the president of the University of Maryland. At one time, UMES was a division of the University of Maryland because back in the separate but equal days, they would send the blacks to UMES in order to say that they had an integrated institution. Because since we were a division, we accommodated all the black students, and then College Park was able to stay pure, so to speak. Once they saw some of the success that we had at UMES and the success that other blacks, particularly in athletics, was having around the world, then they said, oh, wait a minute, maybe we should integrate our athletic program. One of the stories that we have was a guy named Emerson Boozer, who played for the New York Jets. A lot of people might remember his name. He was the Rookie of the Year. They wanted him to go to College Park. So our coach, Skip McCain, took him for a visit to College Park. He was going to be the person that was going to integrate the football team at that time. But he decided he didn't like it, and he stayed at UMES. So he was one of the 6 people that we had in the 1968 Super Bowl. A guy named Johnny Sample, Emerson Boozer, Earl Christie, Charlie Stokes, and Jimmy Duncan. So again, UMES for a long time had a source of pride that we had the most people from one school ever to play in the Super Bowl. Coincidentally, the year that they canceled our program, we had 2 people in the Super Bowl that year. 2 of the best players on the field were from UMES. Everybody knows about Art Shell. He's in the Hall of Fame. Everybody's heard that name before. But another person was a person who played on the team. He was a senior when I was a sophomore, a guy named Carl Hairston, who actually played the longest in the league of any UMES person, 15 years. And then he coached in the NFL for another 20 years. And then he coached in Canada, some other things. And he's listed as in the top 100 players on the Cleveland Browns. I think his ranking is number 71. What's unique about that was he was a right defensive end. And Art Shell was the left tackle, which is the blindside tackle that everybody talks about. So they were actually going against each other. And so Carl had led the league in sacks that year. He had 16 and a half sacks. So here you have 2 UMES people in the Super Bowl, 2 important determinants of the game, and that's the same year they got rid of our program. Now, why did that happen? Because a person named Jim Kehoe, who was a former athletic director at College Park, was hired by UMES. He came down, shut the program down, and left. And in some circles, once certain people do things, then that means you can't do it. And so that's part of the struggle that we've had at UMES. Because this great ex-athletic director wasn't able to bring it back, that means, well, we can't do it. But we never evaluated our options, because the option that we could have pursued, if money is the issue, is Division III. And as I said earlier, all of the schools that we played during that so-called golden era, the white schools, are all Division III today. As a matter of fact, one of our namesakes, the University of Hartford, a couple of years ago was a Division I program in basketball, won their conference championship, but they decided that the money game of being Division I didn't make sense, and so they transitioned back to Division III. The sad thing is we can't have that conversation with our president at UMES. And the only reason why we can't, in my opinion, is because she's got the message that said this is the third rail of higher education in Maryland, and you're not supposed to talk about bringing football back. One of the many successes that I had was we did have a club program for 4 years. I was the head coach, Kim was the offensive coordinator, and we had a pretty good record, won 57% of our games. Now, the interesting thing about that was, at the same time that we had a club football team, a school in Georgia called Kennesaw State went from junior college to a 4-year institution. And when they went, one of the things that they did was they started a club team. They actually wanted to play us. 4 years later, they were a Division I AA school, which is the level that we would play at. Not only that, but they were in the playoffs. So they were able to make the transition that we weren't able to make because they had better support in Georgia than we had in Maryland.
Okay, so I see that you are the chairman of Hawks for Football. So tell us about your organization and how our viewers can get involved.
Okay. Well, Hawks for Football is a long-suffering organization. We started in 2006. It was about 90 alumni got together and said, hey, we want to try to bring football back. So we went to the university and we established 3 different funds. Actually, I had established a fund which we converted over for club football. And then we had one to reinstate the actual football program. And then we had one for a documentary. Because our feeling was, if you can't bring a dinosaur back to life, what do? You put it in a museum. So we said, if you're not going to allow us to bring the football program back, at least you can support a documentary. So we got a little documentary clip, marketing clip, 9-minute clip that's available on YouTube. If you put UMES football, you can see the documentary clip. But when you're up against a university, it's a challenge because people get older, people die. For example, one of the most notable people that came from UMES who didn't play football at the pro level, but was an outstanding college football player, was Clarence Clemens. So if anybody knows about Bruce Springsteen, the big black brother that you saw with the clarinet or whatever you call it, that was Clarence Clemens. And Clarence Clemens went to UMES on a football scholarship. Now, the reason why he ended up with Bruce Springsteen was because he actually got drafted by the Cleveland Browns, but he got injured in a car accident, and he ended up getting a job in New Jersey working for the penal system up there by a friend of his, a guy named Charlie Holmes got him a job, and because of his music talents, eventually he was able to hook up with Springsteen. So if you go to Springsteen's website, all he talks about is Clarence Clemens. Now, what happened with Clarence was, as soon as we got him involved, unfortunately, he died. So there was an article that came out in their Plain Dealer of the Cleveland newspaper, the primary newspaper in Cleveland, where Clarence basically stated, that he wouldn't have been anything without UMES football, and he was a member of a group that was trying to bring it back. So what he was referring to was Hawks for football. But unfortunately, less than a year after that, he ended up dying. Now,
Wow.
we are still, if anybody can help us get to Springsteen, that would be a nice little thing. We'd like to say, look, man, Clarence was your guy. So if you really was your guy, then you would help us raise some money. So one of the things that I've done is reached out to my former boss at McKinsey out in Cleveland to see if he can help me and talk to
Wow. Well, tell us about this current lawsuit that's in place.
Well, the lawsuit is based on our land grant status. As I said earlier, there are 19 HBCUs that had land grant status in 1885, I believe it was. The first set of land grant colleges were all white. The second set that got in the Reconstruction era, one of the things that the black congressman was able to do was to pass legislation for land grants. So the 19 southern states, each one of them got a land grant college. All of them are public institutions except Tuskegee, because of Tuskegee's unique status. So UMES is the land grant for the state of Maryland. And as I said earlier, there have been some analysis done which indicates that most of the states did not give equitable funding for the land grant status. And in the Forbes magazine, they estimated that it's $417 million. So that's what the suit is about. Now, in the Forbes article, our president made it what I think is a fairly interesting statement when she said, they interviewed her, put the mic in her face, and she said, and her response was, I guess the HBCUs didn't have a champion. Now you can imagine, she's the president of the institution. Normally the president of the institution would be a champion, but her hands are tied because she is hired by the chancellor, who works for the system, whose part in the system is the primary, reports to the state. So she doesn't have the independent status to come out and say anything, nor does her board of visitors, nor does the National Alumni Association, who all they want to do is take pictures with the president. So here we are, Hawks of Football. We said, well, look, if nobody's going to do it, then we'll bring the suit. So we got with a law firm in Baltimore, a fairly prominent law firm, and we're suing to see if we can get a settlement on that. So again, there are some direct, the monies that Forbes identified is a direct, direct benefit that the university would have had. But there's some indirect costs because, like I said, when you have a certain level of enrollment, you have a certain level of student fees, and as a result, you have an impact on athletics. So as we were exploring ways to raise money, because the president, in one of her off-the-cuff statements on an NPR statement, she said, if the alumni want football, they need to raise the money. So we took the fact that she said, well, they don't have a champion, and obviously I'm not the champion, and the fact that it was on us to raise the money, and we said, oh, here's this a potential suit out here, so this is an opportunity for us to raise the money and help the university at the same time, overall. So that's why we're doing what we're doing.
All right, so what are the next steps? Where do you go from here, and how can our viewing audience that wants to get involved, how can they get involved?
Well, there are two ways you can get involved. Obviously, we have a fund at the university to reestablish football. So if people want to help us, they can send money to our fund. Okay. The other thing is they can write letters to our president and saying, hey, there's a keen interest out here for the reinstatement of football. And by the way, I just sent a check to their, to their endowment to help reinstate it. And I would think that you might want to support the effort by publicly saying that if you raise the money, then we can bring it back. So that's one of the main ways that you guys can help us. Is, Hofstra football is, we've been out there struggling for the last 20 some years. And primarily because the lack of administrative support. So if we can get a groundswell of people out there that wants to bring back what we feel is a very worthy program. There's some very unique things about our program that, obviously we can tell people. For example, in the state of Maryland, we got the second most people in the College Football Hall of Fame, and we ain't played in 40 some years. The Naval Academy has the highest number of people. I think they have something 20s. College Park has 11. UMES has 5. And we should have about 8 because there are people that have been kind of blackballed, like Johnny Sample and people like that, that they don't want to put in the Hall of Fame. So the primary way that you could help us is by, supporting our effort financially. But even more important, if we got thousands of letters from viewers to our president and to the chancellor of the system saying, hey, I think guys should look at ways to bring back football, then that would be very useful too. So if you don't want to give any money, get a writing campaign, a petition like MoveOn.com does with their different initiatives, and that would be helpful as well.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Mitchell, we really appreciate you coming on our show tonight. It was very enlightening, and we hope to have you again in the near future. But thank you, sir, and we hope that things work out with what you're trying to do, what your intent is, and that the program does get reinstated. And my final question to you, was there any other sport that was affected besides football?
Well, all of our sports were affected.
Basketball too?
Basketball, baseball, every single sport.
Okay.
Our best sport today is bowling. We actually won 5 national championships with bowling.
Wow.
And you would think that's because we went out and found this extraordinary coach through some kind of national search. Mm-hmm. But actually that wasn't the reason why. The person who started our program actually was a professor at UMES, and her assistant was an accounting clerk, not a clerk, but an accounting person at UMES. So the professor says, well, this is too much for me. She turned it over to her assistant, and then she became the person who won the national championships and put everything in place. It was pretty simple strategy. She basically went to South America and got some of the top athletes from South America and made it happen. Now, the sad thing for our students is, I'll tell you how things work when you don't want to emphasize athletics, is students have to travel 45 miles to watch them play at a home meet in a place called Milford, Delaware, which is 45 miles from the university. We don't live stream any of our matches. Our bowling team is consistently one of the top programs in the country. Wow. So much so that the MEAC bowling actually has had universities from other schools that wanted to be part of MEAC bowling. That's the strength of bowling and the MEAC. Mm-hmm. We made some proposals that take one of our old gyms and convert it to a bowling ring and do some things. They fall on deaf ears, and they fall on deaf ears because of the same thing that we're talking about. So even though they won 5 national championships, they're not being promoted the way that they should be. They haven't gotten the notoriety that it should have. You take our track team, for example. We haven't had a home track meet at UMES in eons. They renovated our track. See, all of our projects are controlled by College Parks, administrated by the people at College Park. Can you imagine renovating a track, but not renovating the stands, such that now you have a track that's been renovated, but they say the stands don't meet safety standards, so you still can't have a track meet. So all the track team can do is practice. Baseball team, we don't have any home baseball games. So all of the sports have suffered, not just football. Basketball suffered because it's forced us to play these guaranteed games, and that means what? You're sacrificing a third of your season. There are over 300 and some Division I programs. If UMES, the teams that we've had, were playing the low end of the Division I, we would have a string of 20 game seasons. And 20 games is the benchmark for you to get when you want to get sponsorship and all the rest of that stuff. So if you consistently win 20 games a season, that means you got some people in the stands and all the rest of that stuff. Mm-hmm. But because we play in those guaranteed games, you're basically giving up the first third of your season for 800 to 900, maybe $1 million. Mm-hmm. But you're sacrificing, the ability of your team to win. So I guess the short answer is our whole entire athletic program has suffered.
Wow. Mm. Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. To have a long esteemed HBCU such as UMES suffer as it has, it's just the University of Maryland has really swallowed you up, and it really shows. But again, I'd like to thank you for sharing that with our listening audience. We wish you nothing but the best in the future and what you're trying to do. I hope to someday get down there, maybe help out with the sprint team if you still do that. And then again, I would like to be on that staff when that football team gets reinstated. I would really I'd like to do that. Thank you so much, sir. And Yana, do you have anything for him?
No, just thank you so much for joining us, and we wish you the best.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. And to our audience out there, next week, we're going to have another exciting show for you. Tune in. We're going to have a fitness guru, major retired Melissa Natapraya will be on the show. And if you want to find out about fitness and health eating, next week is the week that you want to be here. See you next week. Peace.
Subscribe to the show.